Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today, there is a debate raging in Turkey and also in Pakistan and perhaps all over the world on the status of Sophia Church or Masjid in Istanbul. It is often debated within the Muslims that the act of Sultan Muhammad Fatih in 1453 of converting this church into masjid was indeed a wrong one, and Muslims should not have transformed the Christian church into a masjid. And so, since the act was wrong, for a few hundred years Muslims maintained an illegal occupation of that Christian church, and now when Mustafa Kemal had converted it into a museum, it should either remain a museum or should be converted back into a church. Well, is this argument a sound one? Should this be the argument on which the status of Hagia Sophia be decided? Let us explain to you here. In the 1400 years of Muslim history, this is the fact that Muslims have never converted any Christian or Jewish church or into a masjid. It has never been done before. But why was Hagia Sophia deliberately converted into a masjid by Sultan Muhammad Fatih? And what he did was Islamically right also. It is absolutely legal, it is absolutely a justified act by Sultan Muhammad Fatih to convert this church into a masjid. And what were the reasons for that? Why did he do that? This was an exceptional act done by one sultan in the 1400 years of Muslim history, but he had his own solid. It was a belief in the Byzantine world that as long as this Hagia Sophia remains a church, Muslims will never be able to conquer this city, or if they conquer it, they'll never be able to hold it. This superstitious belief had so firmly instated in the Byzantine and into the Byzantine army that there was a very strong possibility of multiple rebellions and revolts being built against the Ottomans even after they had captured the city. This was not just a church for the Emperor Constantine. This was also a seat for his political and military and spiritual power. This was like a fort for him, where he would sit and he would draw spiritual authority, moral authority, religious authority, political authority, and military authority. And since after the defeat, Emperor Constantine was never found, he disappeared. So that actually gave strength to the rumors in the Christian world that Constantine is going to return with an army. He has been taken up by the angels and the angels will bring him back. And that as long as he is not in the hands of the Muslims, there is a hope that this city will be reverted back to the Byzantine Empire. And as long as this church remains, Muslims will ultimately be defeated. So this was a very dangerous perception within the Christian community, within the Christian world, which was actually a political and military threat to the Muslim empire. So it was absolutely critical to not just defeat them militarily, but also through a massive psychological operation, through a perception management, destroy the myths and the beliefs and the superstitions that the Christian world believed at that time. And for that reason, this church was converted into a masjid to send a signal to the entire Christian world that now all the beliefs that you held, that this city can never fall into the Muslim hands, and while this church remains, it will ultimately revert back into the hands of the Christianity, have all been killed today. So conversion was a military requirement. Conversion was a massive political requirement to stop the rebellions and the revolts within this Muslim empire which was expanding at that time, and to send a message to the Christian world that all your beliefs that you held were false, were a fallacy, and this city is going to remain in the Muslim hands for now, for all times to come, inshallah, and you should stop your rebellion and resistance and the efforts to take the city back. So what Sultan did was a grand strategic move of psychological warfare, which decisively settled the matter for all times to come. And the city became peaceful, the region became peaceful, and it remained in the Muslim hands for the next 500 years till date. So converting it into a masjid was fully legal, fully justified through Islamic doctrines also. There were thousands of churches within the Ottoman Empire, but they were not touched because the Christian belief of such magnanimity was not associated with any other church. This particular church of Hagia Sophia had strong political and military bearings attached to it. And that is why this whole edifice, this whole belief structure, the fake belief structure of the Byzantine Christianity had to be destroyed. And it was done by Sultan Muhammad Fateh. And as we saw later on, it decisively solved the problem of rebellion and revolts within his Christian subjects. That was the reason it was converted. It was not converted to persecute the Christianity. It was converted to destroy an aging, decadent, decomposed empire who still held on to a fallacious, superstitious belief that as long as this thing remains in Christian hands, Muslims can ultimately be defeated. So now you understand whatever Sultan Fateh did was 100% justifiable. And so Hagia Sophia must remain a masjid for all times to come. In fact, Sultan had cursed the man who would convert it back to a museum or a church. Now it has become a masjid. For 500 years it has remained a masjid, and for all times to come, it will remain a masjid.